Digimon Story Time Stranger was first announced in 2017, a few days prior to Hacker's Memory released, and it was being worked on in the years following. In 2022, it was announced that it would feature the Olympus 12. But finally, in 2025, we got to see this long-awaited title finally being released. Now, before I get into it, this will be a fairly spoiler-light video. I haven't actually finished the game. I think I put in about 10 or 15 hours, but I still want to keep this pretty spoiler-safe, just in case anyone watching hasn't played the game or is still not sure if they want to get the game or not. But just keep in mind that I will be using game footage from my playthrough. However, it's only going to be from the first few hours of the game. It won't feature any major spoilers. Of course, there will be a few Digimon that are appearing in the game, so it will show that, but in terms of spoilers, it'll be fairly spoiler light. I won't be going over the story details, so you won't be spoiled on any story points, but more or less keep that in mind that I will be showing footage, but only from early game stuff, nothing from like anything late game, so it is more or less spoiler safe. So with that out of the way, the first thing I want to talk about are the graphics and the voice acting. The voice acting is really good. It's fully voice acted in both English and Japanese, so if you prefer to play a game in Japanese, you can do that. If you prefer to play the game with the English voice acting, that's completely fair too. That's available, and it is fully voice acted, and the voice actors do a fairly amazing job of voicing these characters. The humans feel kind of a little bit generic, not that that's a bad thing, but it feels like it could be from any kind of Persona game, and I'm probably going to say it's a very similar game to Persona a lot because it's the same genre, so what would you expect? The voice acting of the Digimon, however, is just phenomenal. They do a great job giving life to these Digimon characters that we haven't heard their voices before, which is really great to hear. And the voice acting is just top-notch all across the board. Again, the humans feel more like generic, but they're just humans. That's kind of their thing. The Digimon have a lot of life into them. In terms of the graphics of the game, the graphics are fairly decent, but it's not often my top priority when I'm playing a game. So it's not something like, oh, the graphics are phenomenal, here's how I would compare the graphics to everything else. It's not really something that I take into account when I'm enjoying a game. I don't really mind for graphics much. It's nice when the graphics look good, but it's not my top priority. However, I am also playing this on medium, and that's because I'm playing it on my computer that I built in 2017. But overall, it's handling the game really well. There's no like frame rate dropping issues or anything that I've noticed. It looks fairly good. It looks much better than previous story titles, which you would expect. But overall, graphics seem fairly decent. In terms of the Digimon that are available in the game, it feels like there's a fairly huge range of Digimon available from pretty much across the history of the franchise. However, I have noted that there aren't many new Digimon, as in from the more recent Digimon reference book entries. The newest ones in the game, from what I can tell, are the Bonds of Bravery and Friendship, which appeared in the 2020 movie release of Digimon Adventure Last Evolution Kizuna, which kind of makes sense when you think about the game being announced in 2017, and then it finally we were given a bit more details in 2022, so if this game had been in production since before a lot of the new releases, that makes sense. They're not going to just add these models for the newer Digimon, so that one I kind of makes sense. So if it was in production during Ghost Game, Seekers, Liberator, and of course the most recent anime edition, Beat Break, I can't really fault the game for not rushing in any of the more recent designs that appeared in the Digimon reference book prior to the game's release. I am still hopeful that we'll see newer Digimon being added in DLC. And that's something that, like, isn't an impossibility, but I'm not going to be too surprised if we don't get it. But it would be nice to see the more recent Digimon, such as Terramon from Liberator, for example, or Pulsemon from Digimon Dreamers, Vital Bracelet, Digimon Seekers, etc. So I'm not going to fault the game for not having any of the new Digimon, just because, again, if it was in production from prior to 2020, why would it have anything from the more recent additions to the franchise? So the story is fun and fairly interesting. Again, I'm not going to be going into details about the plot other than what was announced before release, which was it focuses on the Olympus 12, which is great. It's sort of, we get more Lunamon and Coronamon, of course. We did see them in Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, but it is nice to also see them and have them completely fully voiced, and also have them as their own Digimon, not just kind of attached to a human partner. And that's another thing, is that the Digimon in this game feel like they actually have their own personalities rather than being attached to a human partner, and the human partner having the personality, the Digimon just kind of showing up to be like, "Hi, I'm a Digimon, and then this is my attack." It goes on a little bit more than that. They do all have their own personalities, and again, the voice acting really makes their personality shine even more, which is something I appreciate, especially with when you can talk to your Digimon and they get to sort of have little snippets of their personality. So the story is fun, fairly interesting. It's very much a story-heavy game, which is kind of what you would expect from, you know, a game with story in the title. So pretty much what it says on the tin there. Great, it's got story, it's a story game, fantastic. The mechanics of the game are also really fun and add on a few quality of life improvements, such as, and this is something I very much appreciate, the constant access to the Digibank. So you don't have to run and go find a special point where you can access your Digimon bank. You don't have to run to, like, you know, a PC or just like something that gets you access to all your Digimon. They're constantly all there, so you can swap Digimon into your party and out of your party kind of as you feel. In battle, of course, you only have access to your 3 main Digimon and your reserved 3 Digimon, but that's kind of to be expected. They do all get experience points, which is really something I appreciate, especially because, like, if I'm just grinding up some lower level Digimon, I don't want to have to risk them, you know, falling over in battle or what have you. So that's something I appreciate as well. There's also an additional mechanic where you can talk to your Digimon, which helps determine their personality. It's cute, and it's kind of like an almost virtual pet-esque mechanic. It's sort of similar to what we saw in Digimon Survive, which is the different options that you choose in dialogue help determine Digimon evolution. This one isn't as much as what we've seen in Digimon Survive, but it's still a kind of a nice touch, and it does sort of change the gameplay just a little bit, but not as much as compared to Digimon Survive. But it's still something that I appreciated because it's not something I would expect from a Digimon story game, because those tend to be less virtual pet-esque mechanics and more just JRPG. Again, you could compare it with Persona and having the social link where you have to interact with other characters to get certain power-ups or certain abilities. So it does remind me a little bit of that. So there are a few aspects that if you are a Persona fan, you're going to say, hey, that's familiar, and you're probably going to enjoy it, especially if you did like games like Persona 3, Persona 4, and Persona 5. I say those 3 because those are the 3 Persona games that I've played. So I can't really talk about the other ones because I have limited experience with any of the other Persona games. So the mechanics are really nice, and there's also a fairly addictive card game minigame, which isn't compulsory, but I find myself getting stuck in it, playing it just a little bit more. That's probably why I'm fairly early into the story, but I've still put in, like, again, 10-15 hours. I want to say most of that is probably just the card game side game. So it mixes card game mechanics with virtual pet mechanics, and it's really fun. It's kind of cute. It's got sound effects that are reminiscent of the virtual pets. And a fun thing is, if you purchase one of the add-ons, which is the anime songs, you can choose when in the game you want to hear these songs, like battles or if you're just walking around town. But you can also change the music for the card game. So, of course, naturally, I have put in and I'm pretty sure a lot of people who have also bought the anime song add-on have put in the Digimon Tamer song Slash, which is the card slash song. So I'm pretty sure I'm not unique in doing that. I'm pretty sure everyone who has purchased it has also set that straight away as the card game music. But it is nice that you can change up the music and have music from like any of the other Cyber Sleuth games, like Hacker's Memory, Cyber Sleuth, and you can also put in the anime songs as well, which is kind of a nice little extra if you are a fan of the anime or rather a fan of the music from the anime. It doesn't have Atmon songs, which is weird, but it does have music from all the other anime releases, including more recent ones like Ghost Game, but there just are no Digimon from Ghost Game itself, but it's still pretty cute there. So the side game minigame, very addictive. Again, I don't think it's compulsory, but whenever I see a character who's like got the little icon that says that I can play a card game with them, I'm like, well, I guess I'm just gonna do this for the next few hours. It's really fun. So the game overall, at least so far, feels even more like a Persona game than previous Digimon Story games. Especially the Glock that your character pulls out to shoot your Digimon for buffs, or shoots the opponents for damage. So basically, it feels a lot like a Persona game, and I'm not saying, oh, they just ripped off Persona, because it does still feel different enough from a Persona game. But if you are absolutely a Persona fan, you are definitely going to enjoy Digimon Story Time Stranger. Overall, I can see from, as I said, I haven't finished the game yet, but as far as I can tell so far, I can actually see this finally being a definitive Digimon game to recommend to people. A lot of the previous games were like, yeah, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth is good, but it can be a little bit slow, especially at the start. Hacker's Memory is good, but you're going to want to play Cyber Sleuth first. Digimon Survivor is good, but it is 70% visual novel, 30% tactical RPG, so if you don't like either of those, you're probably not going to like Digimon Survive. Digimon Next Order is good, and it can be really fun, but it has virtual pet X mechanics, so your Digimon just dies and you have to re-raise it from the baby again. This one feels like an actual game that I can just recommend off the bat. It's accessible because you don't have to pull out an old gaming console or emulate it, like I would if I wanted to say, hey, play Digimon World 2003. The 8-year-old that played the game really enjoyed it, so I'm sure that an adult would also enjoy that. Unfortunately, you have to, again, emulate or grab a PlayStation. So this is finally a game that's accessible and is, as far as I can tell so far, very enjoyable to play. So we finally potentially have a Digimon game that we can just recommend to people. You don't need to know much about the rest of the franchise. There are Easter eggs and references to both previous video games as well as moments in the anime, but you don't need to know any of those small references to enjoy the game. They're kind of just more or less small little Easter eggs, but not knowing won't hinder your enjoyment of the game. So it's kind of a good mix between things that you can enjoy as a fan, but also you can enjoy it as someone who doesn't know much about Digimon. So I can absolutely see this becoming the Digimon game to recommend, because, as I mentioned, we haven't really had that with previous titles. They've all had one sort of caveat of, you will enjoy this unless you don't like this, or you will enjoy this, but there is this one small annoying part of it about the game that can be a major part depending on how you feel. So basically those are my more or less first impressions and early game thoughts for the new released game. Again, I hope that any of the footage didn't spoil too much. Again, it's all fairly early game stuff, so hopefully it's still fairly spoiler light. I don't want to spoil anything for someone who is just sort of still tossing up whether or not they want to buy the game, or if they're just like, hey, it's on sale, and I'm sure it will be because Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth goes on sale every month or so, it feels. But those are basically my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts, comments, questions, etc. in the comment section below. Like this video for, hey, do we finally have a definitive Digimon game we can just recommend when somebody says, hey, I want to play a Digimon game, where do I start? So like this video for that. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you have subscribed, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your enemies, and of course, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!